Welcome to Couch Church, where we take the plastic off of the living room furniture. That's right, we're sitting on Grandmama's couch so we can discuss the issues at the crossroads of Christ and culture. Hey everybody, welcome to Couch Church, where we take the plastic off of the living room furniture. That's right, we are taking the plastic off of your grandma's living room couch. Come on into the living room so we can have a conversation at the intersectionality. That means the crossroads of where Christ meets culture. I'm Orlando Jermaine Bago, Senior Pastor, and today I wanted to ground us in this discussion around economic justice, because I believe that we all have been called to this higher purpose and how we use our resources to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. Dr. King, in his book entitled "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community," he takes a stand for what is known as economic justice and to strive for a better future for everybody. But what he says is we must use the power of our wallet, the power of our voice, and even the power of our votes to create a society that is equitable and justice for all. I want to move straight forward into this discussion, this conversation about faith and hope, this discussion around fulfillment of purpose, this conversation about what true economic justice looks like. Joining me today for this discussion is Lady Ebony. What's going on, Lady Ebony?
Hey, Pastor, what's going on? I'm excited about today's conversation.
I'm excited a little bit to talk about economic and justice. You know, that combination, really can go any kind of which way.
You sure enough can.
And joining us today also is Crystal and India. What's up, team?
Hello.
What's going on? Thanks for having us.
Yes.
All right, here's what I want to do. I want to ground the discussion in a biblical text. It's found in Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 and 7. All right, here's what it. Listen very closely. This is God asking a question through the prophet Isaiah to the people. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of the unjust and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke? Is not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wandering with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not turn away your own flesh and blood? I think that speaks to us in this discussion so much so I don't think in the text it's a question that begs a response. Sometimes God uses scripture in a more rhetorical sense. But I want us to take it on and try to find ways to answer the question that God posed. When you hear the prophet Isaiah talk about what we ought to be doing, how do you feel about that as it relates to economic justice?
So first, for myself, I believe economic justice is the idea that the economy will be successful if it's fair. And that's race, religion, creed, origin, disability, and age. So we have a lot to work on here. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, like I said, this conversation can go a lot of ways. But all of those, I think, are very relevant points in terms of when you talk about fairness, right? What becomes fair? Let's just, since this is Black History, what's fair for Black people?
I think that's very loaded because you can, what we talking about for education, but anytime you have a people that cannot compete in the same way because of centuries and decades of discriminatory policies and procedures, I'll even take it back. You started off with scripture. We can take so many leaders that we see, prophets and teachers in scripture, that were fighting and speaking up on the behalf of a people that were discriminated against, right? Policies and procedures, whether you look at the story of Moses, whether you look at the story of Esther, right? Whether you look at the story of Joseph, you can take any one of them, and at some point they are facing governmental structures who have placed oppressive behaviors, even if it's religion. Who will you believe? Who will you serve? And God then chooses someone, right, in our community, who in that community who will be the voice and speak, right? So if we take that now to where we are, right, we've seen the Tubmans, we've seen King, we've seen Malcolm, we have all these leaders. We must now then ask the same question: who will we be in our communities for these different levels of oppression?
When you was talking, I was thinking about Daniel. You know, and how a creed went out that no one could pray to any other god, right? And here's Daniel, who decides, you know, in the midst of what the government says, that, you know, he's still going to honor his God. So many times we allow systems, government systems, political systems, financial systems to promise us something, and then in return we got to lose our voice.
Right. And then we're easily forgotten. And that's what Dr. King was talking about. He was talking about the twice forgotten man.
Yes.
So we lose out on opportunities, we lose out on activities, because we're just forgotten, because our voice is not heard. We don't get a chance to speak or be within certain activities or have certain opportunities. So it's like, how can we get back to those programs that's supposed to be fair, but they're not fair, so that we can have a voice? How can we implement things in place for our own selves within our communities, so that our voices are heard? Because it was labor. So like Dr. King talked about how they protested against businesses and different programs and systems that did not really support the black man. You want my money. Now let's think about that. As we are the biggest consumers.
Right.
Yeah.
We buy. How much do we invest?
Don't just
How
give
much
us
do
access.
we build?
Don't just give us access to these programs. We want to be at the table implementing these programs and be there with the policymakers so our voice can be heard, and you know what we want. That way we could take what we learn and what we know back to the community, become knowledgeable, share the information, grow in wealth like these other cultures do.
But don't you get tired begging for a seat at the table? I mean, what, you know,
That's a good point.
It's they see you, they know you, and it's like sometimes, you know, we banging at the door, please let me in. Who said you ain't gotta give me a seat at your table? I'm gonna make my own.
Shirley Chisholm said that. Yes. Right. She brought her chair. She's bring my chair right to this table and sit down. But that is a demand that you have to put in place. Even when you look at Dr. King and we read throughout this book, what we see, whether it was King, whether it was SCLC or SNCC, when he was writing this book, even before this, we saw him go to Chicago. We saw him go into the Watts area. So he went into communities, spent time. They set up camp to see what these discriminatory practices from housing, all these policies look like. They coalesced, right? And then they began to come up, or first of all, understand what was happening specifically in those communities.
But even when they created bus boycotts, there were jurisdictions, there were different places that was making bus boycotts illegal.
Absolutely.
Right. So just think about this. I'm demanding,
because they were losing out on money. There was an economic into all of it.
Economic. But I am demanding justice. I am demanding fair equity distribution in riding this bus, and you won't give it to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ban my people. I'm going to say we ain't riding the bus no more. We boycott. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our cars, and we're going to carpool, back and forth. And then government will start developing legislation to say it's illegal. It's not just illegal to boycott, but it's also illegal to carpool.
So
Right?
then you gotta look at the role that the government plays.
So now here's the thing. Here is my issue with the bus boycott. Because once we got our ability or the right to sit where we wanted to sit on the bus,
Stop.
why we ain't go get our own bus system? What happened to us now? All the money we saved for over a year in that one location. What is the mind frame that now take those dollars collectively and now invest it as a way, because sometimes they give you stuff to quiet you down. But that's not access, right? That's a bone or a treat.
But that's something that has to be learned. Now we're talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about understanding to take this risk and take it as a collective bargain.
Right.
It's kind of like unionize.
Right.
So you want us to unionize with each other, take the risk to fight for what we want, gamble our savings, our little bit of savings that we have in order to go out and spend it on this big bus company that we don't know if we're going to have an investment off of.
And then you an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
serial entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, everything entrepreneur.
That's dear to my heart. And what I was thinking about, even as Chris, when you was talking, is look at the pandemic when they was giving out the what is
PPP
it?
though.
Yeah, PPE.
PPP.
And they was giving out checks. Where did the money go?
Oh, they went and bought
Where
Range
did the money go?
Rovers.
Yeah.
They went and they bought. They never invested.
That's it,
That's
right?
And part of that is who educated them on investing. Do they really know how to invest? Who's creating systems to teach them how to invest? I even had to hold a conversation with my son. I remember because he's like, "Oh, we got this check. We about to go buy this." I said, "No, it's not. 2/3 of this is about to be invested in future endeavors, son. You can have this 1/3, but let me make it clear: 2/3 is going into investments."
Right.
And he did not totally understand because he's like, it's Christmas. A lot of our family members
Christmas in July.
Christmas in July. I'm about to go shopping. I'm going to the wharf to get some seafood.
Oh.
I'm going to go buy some nice
I'm going on
attire.
vacation.
I'm going on
I
vacation.
ain't gonna lie. I feel a little convicted.
See?
I feel
Wow.
a little convicted. I'll eat crabs. I'm going on trips.
But
you know.
that just say our mindset. You just go back to what we've seen, what we've learned. We didn't grow up as
Or
entrepreneurs.
what we feel as though we have been denied.
Yes.
Right? There are some luxuries that we feel as though somebody said we couldn't have them. And we know that there were some car dealerships you can't go into. You can go right out into the state of Maryland, Prince George's County, and Bowie. And the deeds to the houses, they were built by a white developer. And the deed to the houses say that this house can never be owned by a Negro. I mean, right? So when we get the money, then it's like, oh, I need to go spend it. Because we don't have this systematic, we don't have this generational understanding of what it means not to deny gratification, but to invest for future for endeavors or future pleasures.
Generational wealth.
We don't know how to build generational wealth. You know, how many times, every time somebody died, what's the first thing you see pop up on Facebook?
A
GoFundMe.
A GoFundMe.
But I think that one of the key things that you said, India, is that I had a conversation with my son.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
soon as you said that, right? So kids are going to automatically want to do whatever. You got to train. The Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go, right? So that means because there are a key set number of years that you really have to be in that child's ear to train them. Don't mean won't go crazy at some point, but they will have some knowledge to fall back on.
Yes.
So when you said, I had a conversation with my son, he already has, I know Charles, he has a business mindset, period,
He
but you've
does.
had to have the conversation to reel him back in, which means on a fundamental level at home, these are the conversations that we need to have with our children. Sit them down. You're talking about creating generational wealth. Even if I get and inherit that wealth, I won't know what to do with it. So around the dinner table, or if you don't even have a whole lot of time, this is what we're putting into the mortgage. This is what I do with my check. I grew up in a household where my mother explained what this pot of money was. She didn't know, she wasn't a master investor, but I understood savings. Now, my generation, I think we're getting more into the investment part.
Yeah, exactly.
And because this world is such a technological world, there are opportunities for us to go online.
Financial
Whether
literacy.
we're on IG
Literacy
all the
classes.
time. Follow you some influencers, number one,
Yes.
that can help train and give information when it comes to financial literacy, because at the very basics of what we're talking about, these disparities, they can change when our money changes. That's why systems have been able to hold so much power. It's because of the money.
Just think about it. So we've been hanging with each other since the pandemic.
Right.
So it's not that I didn't want to own a business. It's not that I didn't know what resources to go utilize. Y'all empowered me. So now we're talking about the circle that you're hanging around.
All right, listen. Let's go back to the Isaiah text. I wanna throw out some keywords. Loose the chains of injustice. Untie the cords of the yoke. Set the oppressed free. Break every yoke. How do you what becomes the roadmap in getting to economic justice in the Black community? Here's why I asked that question. Because earlier I asked a question about Black community. And Lady Adam, you said, that's kind of loaded. One of the challenges that I have is that it seems as if our issues for the Black community are being absorbed in everybody else's issues. And when solutions come, they're not solutions for the Black community. There are solutions that benefit the Black community. There's this larger solution, and that as a Black community, we should be okay with it because we benefit from it. But everybody else have their issues, their agendas, and their demands from government for government intervention. And then somehow ours are absorbed into that. So how do we create a roadmap, a blueprint for economic justice for the Black community?
One thing I will say that we saw, I think what we saw during the civil rights movement, even with the Poor People's Campaign, was a very good roadmap for how we begin going down this road, which many people have used. Part of that, I believe, is also using our voice in spaces where policy is created, right? So we talk about all these things, but there are policies being made. There are public meetings that are being had. The question is, are you in these meetings so that you know what your city or town is going to look like 10 years down the road? What plan do developers have? Is your community one that's being targeted? Are funds going to be coming to your community for better schools? The infrastructure bill, I'll give you one good one. We have a major infrastructure bill that was signed and bipartisan into law. That now means the federal government has distributed money to your state. What you need to know now is making sure your local reps are actually putting that money into communities that have been disenfranchised. So if you live in an area where roads have been put through, no money's been invested, the president can the Congress can put these into law, but your local representative doesn't have to make your community a priority.
But we also need in that our training programs in trades and right? In construction and trade.
So that we can get contracts.
Because at one time they were in our schools and they were taken away from our school. Right? We had a vocation. And then what did they do? They then took the program and moved it from our school and then created new vote programs for returning citizens. And then the returning citizens would then get these trainings and certifications. But guess what? Then they didn't go to the construction companies to get hired, but then they can't get hired because they done checked the box.
They have a record.
Right, now they have a record. You know, so it's like we always caught up in this rat race.
So one thing did yesterday, we sat down at the table at a policy forum, a budget forum, with Mayor Bowser, and it's her fiscal 24-year budget.
Washington, D.C.,
which is $20 billion. So she asked for parents, outreach organizers, just everyone input on this budget. And it was our responsibility to vote for what's most important: education, health and human service, economic justice, public safety, transportation. And it was there that we found our voice heard. And we, my stand is on education. I believe in making our children, teaching them how to learn these things, how to get vocational training, again, how to become knowledgeable about these processes so they could do well and they can compete when they get out in the world. Because sometimes we're not in a race. Matter of fact, have we even began the race?
Right.
So until I think the efforts to end gender-driven wages, also provide the career gaps that we had with our other counterparts, are we really going to meet these needs about economic justice being fair?
And where we spend our money. So once that happens, these companies, we have to be conscious, and this is a very conscious generation about where we spend our money. So if you're going to have this, bring your big company to our neighborhood, what is the investment that you have in this community, and are we getting anything back from that? And putting pressure on companies. There is power that we have. We just don't always know what it is or how to use it, which is why we also have to organize. Indy, I know that was your first time going to the budget meeting.
Yep.
I was really curious, since that was your first time, was there a wow moment in that for you?
Well, I had two wow moments. The first wow was I was so proud of Ward 7 and 8 showing up, because I want to say we were a large percentage that was in that environment. And sometimes I think some people think we don't care.
Right.
We do care. It just, and in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, so we've shown up today. And now our voices is going to be heard at these different tables. And then the second thing was, from an educational point, I was like, why am I having to fight for people to understand that education should be at the top of this?
Right.
Like, they gave us the question was, how would you allocate $100? And what percentage will go towards these 6 different infrastructures or systems within the government that money is about to be allocated to? And I'm like, why am I having to fight for education to be at the top? It's like 8 of us at this table, and it's only 2 of us that agree that education should be at the top of this list.
20%.
Yes, and I'm listening to. I'm a listener. I'm going to listen to why you all stated whatever, and I'm like, but let's think about that. If you don't have the education to know how to tap into some of those resources, there was a gentleman there who had I want to say he had 50% in human resources, and he stated that because of immigrants. This is the only resource they can have because they're immigrant. And then literally after he stated that, I was like, but if they're not educated, how on God's green earth are they going to be able to tap into those resources?
See, he wasn't educated as well. He wanted to take $10 billion and invested in health and human services.
So here's the thing. because again, is what do we need? What are the solutions for the black community? And if education is a solution for the black community, then we ought to be advocating for increased dollars in the public education system.
Yes.
Now, what does that mean? That when we talk about increased dollars for the public education system, we got to also recognize what that and the impact of that on public charter schools, right? Because
Exactly.
sometimes we tout, and some public charter schools are very successful, but we got to recognize that those dollars follow the student from public education to charter school education. And too often, if that child decides to go back into the public school system for that school year, those dollars don't follow, right? And so there's a whole lot of nuances in that. And so I think it's good to be at budget meetings, and I think it's good to advocate for an increase in public dollars for public education. Here's my question. How can we create our own systems
Yes.
and our own homes and our own communities? How do we take how do we take advantage of what's actually right here for us and by us? We're talking about economic justice, and although government plays a part, there's some governmental intervention as it relates to minimum wage and a living wage
Housing.
and labor rights and housing.
Huge.
Part of the failure in education is that we as a collective community have failed to pass on the information for our own people in order to garner our own success in our community. It's hard. It's hard for people to fight for a community
They don't want
where they have no vested ownership in. You hear that? So we're renting houses, renting apartments. So we're not building value for our people. There's no generational wealth. We're doing that for some other community, some other people outside of our community. So how do we begin again to talk about home ownership? How do we then begin to make sacrifices where we again move families into our homes in order to save money? Listen, my grandmama and granddaddy came
I
up
can't
from.
come live with you.
Nah, I wasn't talking about you. I'm talking about my
Like we just had one of our kids say that. I was like, but that's a good conversation.
Live with you.
But it is something that we really have to think
Yes.
about, because home ownership is how many, especially white folks, were able to build their
Yes.
wealth.
Their wealth.
So that
Exactly.
even if you
Build
fall on
it.
hard times, I even have something to
Yes.
offer up as collateral. You know what I mean? And so, or when someone dies, they have something to pass something on to. So when we look at what has been left, like this is the generation where we really have to begin to think about that. And we do have to think about how, I mean, I'm not encouraging none of the kids to come
That's
move
right.
in.
Come on home, back home.
But tell the story about your grandmother.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so my grandmother, grandfather moved up from Georgia in 1945, right? And we still own the family house here in Washington, D.C. But it was oftentimes said that the house
It was full.
was full of people sleeping everywhere except for the bathroom floor. You stepping over.
Even your
folk.
friends came. I said, "You lived here too."
But
Does everybody
guess
live
what? Yeah, because we learned that, right? Nobody, and we learned it by watching and observing, right? Nobody set us at the table to say this is what you do, but it became ingrained in us. And so I remember when I came home from boarding school, my best friend at boarding school, who lived in another state, didn't want to go back home, so he came moved in with us. Right? And guess here's the thing. It was nothing for me to ask my parents because it had been demonstrated time and time again. Here's the other thing. We get so caught up on the big dream. We want the big house. We want all these bathrooms, but we don't understand or recognize what it means to have a starter home.
Exactly.
Go out here and buy you a condo and mortgage that condo 2 years. Now go get you another home and move somebody in your condo to rent from you. Right. That's growth and development.
But
That's
you ain't talking about the bottom line of that house. What people don't know, if you don't live in DC, when I went to the house when we were engaged, that the street that Granny is on, that right now she's the only black
Yeah.
or we the only
Yeah,
black
yeah,
family
yeah,
that
yeah.
is still there, but the value
$1 million
of that
homes.
$1 million home.
and I'll
So
put my business out there now.
not
What y'all doing?
I mean, along the block. I don't know what Granny's doing, but I'm just saying because you
Bottom
kept
side
that. Well, that's true.
Thank you.
It is true. However, it doesn't matter. That whole community, when we went to look at some of the homes that were on sale to the left and to the right, I was like,
But
this is
here's the
insane.
thing.
I'm
Here's the
struggling
thing.
with now.
Most of those
When I
houses.
become a homeowner
Yeah.
and living down the street.
Right.
How can I afford those homes?
Right.
And I live down. I'm a Washingtonian.
Right, you
I
like right around the corner.
I live right around
yeah.
the corner.
Yeah.
No, I can't afford
But
that on a one-parent house.
Here is the thing. Ask yourself how other people are affording it,
How they did it.
and it may mean that you have to make some sacrifices in some of your pleasures.
You want to come let me live with you?
Right, I'm just saying you may not you might can't have a nice house and a nice car.
And a nice car.
Right? You might need to go get you a bicycle pass. They got bike lanes all throughout DC
And listen,
now. Right, because
in Ward
here's
City, that
the
is what
trade off.
they're
saying.
No,
DC,
but
that's the better thing.
watch
Right.
here's the trade off.
You're right.
Because
That's
I
$500
can
in
afford a $500,000 house if I don't have a car, if I don't have gas, and I don't have insurance. Because those three combined gonna run you $600 to $800 a month. And if you don't have it, then that $600 to $800 you can then add to your mortgage payment. What I'm saying is that there is this need, as India was talking about, where it's the same conversation, the same concept. If you had $100,
What you gonna do?
what you gonna do with it?
Exactly. And
It is where your priorities are.
Yeah.
You started saying something, Krista, that I thought was so important, and we've been doing this. So, and it was, who do you hang around? So
Yeah.
during the pandemic, we kind of reacquainted ourselves with some new friends and two other couples who we hang with all the time. All three of us have these entrepreneurial spirits, all of them. Usually in one works a traditional job, the other one is an entrepreneur, but we were sitting around talking about, and we have budget-friendly meals when they come over.
Yeah.
Very budget-friendly.
Rice.
It doesn't matter how. Little fried fish.
Rice.
But we sit, but
Yeah,
it's, but we sit, our conversations began to turn to talk about, hey, you got $5,000? Do you have $5,000? If we pulled our money, and if somebody didn't, it was like, okay, how can we get it? If we pulled our money, gave us a 6-month benchmark to see what is the base we need to kind of create business. So our conversations have completely switched to say, with these three couples, there's power in this room to be able to create, to invest, to do something.
Yep.
Even, and not, in addition to that, all of us have children. So why don't you bring your kids over here for a while you all go figure out some stuff on the business side, need some time off. But that's community. So you got to also change. If the people aren't around you, don't have that type of mindset.
Stop hanging with buzzards.
You know what that says?
Fly with eagles.
You know.
And
That's
until you
it.
become one, they'll soar like a pigeon.
I know DC pigeon. I didn't
That actually says your partner, your friends can set you up financially successful for financially.
Yeah.
Your mentality, you physically, you emotionally,
Right.
you spiritually.
Right.
It is so important.
You feed
to
off each other.
To be married to the right partner, to have the right friends, to be encouraging to one another.
It's your vision. It creates the vision
Yes.
for you and the
But
possibilities.
India said something earlier. To your point about having the conversations if, you got this amount of money and that amount of money, how do we come together?
Yeah.
India mentioned this, it was a word or something that really dealt with fear factor. Right? We can actually have the tools and the resource. scared to use it because there's a chance we might lose it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to investing, people want to hold on to something materialistic. Like they see, if I buy this $400 shirt, I can see that. I know exactly what that is. But versus if I go put my money in the stocks, or if I go put my
bonds,
money into this crowdfunding investment or something along that line,
Y'all remember
I
that
don't
flower?
have nothing tangible.
Oh,
Yeah, there y'all go.
Y'all remember that flower?
I told y'all,
I know y'all
right.
did the flower.
Y'all was
talk about
the
that.
flower.
Y'all know
I looked at that
how many
flower.
of us did the flower on his couch?
Exactly.
How many of us did
Not
the
me.
flower?
I told you to trust God and tithe.
That
That's
is
what I
not what
said.
this is. That's
I
not what
trust
this is
God and
about.
tithe. Y'all right here doing flowers and susus and all that stuff. Give your money to the Lord. See, can't be God's giving.
You can't be God.
No matter how hard you try.
But it's how many of us are still trying the opportunities? The
Yes.
opportunities.
They're
Quick
there.
money,
Right.
quick fix.
But take that Starbucks money, take
Yeah.
that, when you really, if you add it up in a week, even if you had to adjust how you eat and what you
Hair,
eat, nails,
carry out.
hair, and I get it, right? Maybe invest in a
Cokes, Pepsi.
style that stays long, right? Cokes and Pepsi. But add that up, right?
Yes.
Just begin setting that aside and then saying, let me save it. But then where can I invest? I'm not gonna lie. When I started looking at a lot of really successful, listening to podcasts on growing your
Yes.
finances, listening to podcasts on how to redo my taxes. It blew my mind at small things that I could do that could create wealth and bring in extra lines of income for myself. That's how we empower. You know what I mean?
Right. Let me throw this out here. Let me give you a backdrop. So our baby girl had in her room these buckets. And we had change in one bucket. We had $5, $10, $20, $1 bills, and these other buckets. Well, last summer she decided she was going to what's that place? Six Flags.
Oh my
right?
God.
She was Six Flags. And so I'm like, okay, woo, let her go with her cousins and stuff like that. Ebony goes into the room and was like, what happened to your money?
I'm the parent that snoops. I go through everything.
And she was like, oh, I spent it at Six Flags.
$20 on one item
Right? And then when she lost that item, she went back the next week
with another
with
$20
another
bill
$20
and bought that raggedy fan that squirts water.
And bought it again. But what it dawned on me is that she didn't know the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
Right?
She found out, though.
What it goes back to what India stated. What I know the value in is what's tangible.
Yeah.
What I can put in my hand. And it's interesting that we're having this conversation because she's 9 years old. I keep wanting to say she's 8, but I just looked up this app that's called Money Savvy Generation. Right? It's for kids 8 to 14 years
we
old.
need this.
And it has these tutorials to talk about money. There's a game in the app that they play with money. There's a whole saving mechanism. They say, I want a new iPhone.
Yeah.
And tell them what their saving goal needs to be. Because what I recognize is that in our failure was not in telling her to save, but teaching her how to save.
How to save
And why? The
So
why
if
behind
you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And I think that we need to go back to just the basics. The basics of not telling, but demonstrating.
Exactly.
I like that.
What does it look like to be successful? I knew a man, he was a bricklayer his whole life, and he went to work every day in a black suit. Yeah. And never got a drop of mortar on his clothes because he took pride in what he was doing. He took pride in what he had on. He took pride when he walked down the street. And I think we have to get back to the place where we are full of pride.
Is that a true story?
It is a true story.
I don't mean to break the moment, but I was like, this man laying bricks.
I'm trying to wrap this up. I'm trying.
What y'all don't know is
Might be your dad.
my
one of your
father.
dad's
I know,
stories. Might be
Papa.
a
My father-in-law is one of the greatest storytellers in the world, and by the end, the dog will be talking and somebody will be flying, and it sounds. So I was like, I think you invoking Papa. The spirit of Papa just came out.
His name was Mr. James.
That still sounds like. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to do, but y'all was thinking the same thing.
You had
Like,
to be thinking.
Now I don't even know how I'm going to end this lesson today.
oh, where do we go from here? 'Cause
Where do we?
okay, that was a lot for me. Sorry.
Here it is.
Okay.
Here is the point I was trying to make with my story of Mr. James the bricklayer. Is that economic justice is not just a matter of economics, but it's also an issue of morality.
Yes.
Yes.
How we feel, how we perceive ourselves, what we invest in adds more value than any amount of money that you can have in the bank. And so we have to move towards economic justice by engaging in collective action. Right? We have to begin to utilize our power for civil disobedience.
Right.
Even if that means going down to City Hall or the Capitol Hill, right?
Yeah.
We have to begin to develop a sense of stronger solidarity and commitment to whatever the cause is that's pressing. There is no reason why the George
Floyd Justice and
Floyd
Policing Act. Mhm.
Justice and Policing Act has not passed. Except for there's a lack of solidarity and commitment to the cause.
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe that is how we begin to show our civil disobedience. Something has to change. But I'm tired of asking others to change it for me. Somehow, we need to find new ways, new strategies, and I'm grateful for the ones that are old and the ones that are operating, but now we need to add to them. If we're going to bring about a sense of economic justice. Listen, y'all, this conversation has been enriching and empowering. It has been liberating, and I'm grateful to have you all on the couch today.
I know you are.
I think it next week we're going to end Black History with a reframe. We're going to go back to community. We're going to go back to identifying and defining what the Black community is. Because let me say this. I am tired of hearing people say that the Black community is not monolithic. Ain't no community monolithic.
Why do we even have to say that?
Right. But that don't mean that we can't define what our community is, what our values, what our core beliefs, what our tenets, what our faith is, and how we come together collectively to express this. And maybe here's some homework. Here's some homework. Show me some Black communities, past and present. And show me some Black communities that were self-contained,
Yes.
right?
I gotcha.
As examples.
I got
Right, maybe we need some
Straight
examples.
solution show.
Right?
Straight solution show.
Straight
Next
solution.
one. I'm
yeah.
loving this.
We got it off our
okay.
chest. Now
We're gonna show you what to do. We're gonna do a roadmap.
Right. So those communities in the past that we've had, even present
There's some
day,
communities doing some amazing
community or
things.
some business collectives
Yes.
that are by black and for black.
Yes.
Right. Let's next week come back and let's just throw out some different ways in which we can show and demonstrate our collective power as black people.
Gotcha. I love that.
All right.
All right.
God
All
bless.
right. Hey, listen, thank you all for joining us this week for Couch Church. Make sure you follow us on all things at Couch Church DMV. Go to our website, go to our Instagram page, like us, share us, and promote us. Until next time, may God bless you, may the Lord keep you, and may heaven continue to smile upon you. Peace.